The Trump administration stepping up its support for free speech and protections for religious groups on college campuses, threatening to cut federal education funding to universities that do not comply. It's debate time with tonight's panel. Fox News contributors Leslie Marshall and Guy Benson, welcome to you both.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay, so this is how it would work. The Education Department can suspend or terminate grants to public universities if they're violating the First Amendment, and in extreme cases could lose other funds. This is what Education Secretary Betsy DeVos says. Students should not be forced to choose between their faith and their education, and an institution controlled by a religious organization should not have to sacrifice its religious beliefs to participate in department grants and programs. So, Leslie, what's so wrong about that?
Well, a few things. First of all, although they may be public, they're not free. I mean, there are parents that are paying for tuition. And although everyone certainly has the First Amendment right via our Constitution, my favorite amendment in the Constitution, there is nothing in the First Amendment that protects hate speech. And sometimes there are people, whether it's far left or far right, or maybe not even political, that want to speak at an organization, at a public educational facility such as this. And in addition to that, you're not only stepping on what the parents want for their children, but it also makes it difficult for the school to ensure the safety of the public population if you bring in somebody who could incite some type of violence. So I don't like this, because I don't think it's just black and white. I think there are gray areas here, simply because, look, you have the right to invite people, but you don't have the right to invite individuals that could become violent or, are going to yell fire in a crowded theater. First Amendment doesn't cover that.
Right. I mean, and we agreed on that. But this idea of hate speech not protecting the First Amendment, Guy, that's a different debate, because I think about the Westboro Baptist case at the Supreme Court. They found that their speech, which I think the vast majority of Americans would find exceptionally offensive and hateful, is protected by the First Amendment.
Yep. Yes, the First Amendment explicitly does protect hate speech, as a matter of fact. Protecting unpopular speech is sort of the heart of the First Amendment. And I think it's sort of a heckler's veto argument to say, well, if someone might incite violence without doing so directly because of their hate, I'm not sure that's a good excuse. I think we should be able to hear things that we don't like without getting violent. That is not to say that colleges or universities or groups should be inviting hateful people. You don't have to give people platforms. But I think Leslie, with all respect, got that backwards. Overall, I think the specifics here, though, will matter, how this is implemented, but the thrust of it, the instinct, is correct. If a public institution funded by taxpayers cannot safeguard fundamental American constitutional liberties of the First Amendment, speech and freedom of religion, then there should be, I think, consequences for that. And for the Trump administration to say, hey, there's some strings attached here, you have to safeguard those liberties, I think ultimately at its core, that's the right overall instinct.
Okay, so let's talk about this idea that the OMB director, member of the Trump administration, Russell Vought, sent out a letter to executive branch agencies that they needed to scale back some particular trainings. He says the divisive, false, and demeaning propaganda of the critical race theory movement is contrary to all we stand for as Americans and should have no place in the federal government. Quick comment from you both about whether that's a good move, and we'll start with you, Guy.
I think critical race theory is very pernicious and toxic. I also think that we can do better in terms of listening to each other and learning from each other. There's a balance. Leslie a moment ago spoke about sort of striking a balance. I agree with her on this front. There's a balance to strike, and it's a tricky one these days.
Leslie?
I think Guy and I agree there regarding the balance. I think the problem comes in this nation, especially where we have a lot of people. For example, I'm a white woman. I don't understand what it's like to be Asian. I don't understand what it's like to be Latino. I don't understand what it's like to be African American. And we see a lot of problems right now, the racial injustice that so many people feel very strongly about, are protesting about, and some even so angry that it does lead to violence. That this isn't something that, can be ignored. And quite frankly, it has been for too long.
Well, I think that you all both agree on probably more than you disagree on, but the details and the nuance matter. So we'll leave it there. Leslie and Guy, great to have you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.